The stranger explained that he was interested in the tablet the boy had hidden. Jinbeek immediately agreed to give it to him if the man would let him go. The warrior looked at the boy and couldn't understand how such a weak young man could take possession of an elder's tablet. He threatened the lad with his sword and ordered him to tell the whole truth about how the thing came to him. Jinbeek's legs even trembled with fear. He didn't think of deceiving the man and bluntly said that he found the body on the shore. The stranger listened carefully and couldn't believe his ears. This simply could not have happened. The warrior shook Jinbeek once more and demanded a detailed description of the man, what he looked like and what he was wearing. Upon hearing the details, the man immediately groaned. His older brother was also about 40 years old and had a scar on his forehead in the shape of a cross. Upon hearing the details, the man immediately dropped. His older brother was also about 40 years old and had a scar on his forehead in the shape of a cross. The stranger let go of the boy, and he fell to the ground, groping for air. The man asked what the boy had done with the body, and hearing that it was buried in the stormwoods, ordered him to take it there. Shinny stood on the shore of the sea, gazing into its changing surface. The water was calm now. The woman eagerly awaited information from the mercenaries she had taken with her on this mission, and they had finally returned. However, the mercenaries had searched the shoreline and the entire area, but had returned empty-handed, making Mrs. Shinny furious. The woman was sure that the body of her old acquaintance must have been washed up on this side of the shore. She ordered the soldiers to search every corner of the village, for if there were no traces of the man on the shore or in the surrounding countryside, he might have survived. The stormwood forest was peaceful. The sun was nearing sunset and shining its rays on the trunks of the tall trees. Jinbeek led the warrior to the place where he had buried the stranger who had been washed ashore by the waves. The warrior looked sadly at the pile of stones set up as a sign of remembrance for the departed man. He still could not believe what was happening. The young man explained that he had been alone when he found the man and didn't know what to do, so he decided to bury him here. Tears ran down the man's cheeks. He was deeply upset by the death of his mentor. The warrior placed his sword to his left and fell to his knees in front of his commander's grave. He knew who had killed his mentor and decided he would not back down until he had seen the blood of the scoundrel Jicho. The boy was surprised. He had heard the name before, but he didn't know who this man was whose name was on the lips of many. The warrior wiped away his tears and thanked his mentor for training him and passing on all his knowledge. At their last meeting there had been a misunderstanding between them, and the apprentice had apologized to the older man. The young man realized that the warrior had finished saying goodbye to his commander and hurried to call out to him. The man thought the boy wanted to show him something else, but he only pointed out that it was getting dark, and the man probably had no place to sleep. He suggested that the warrior stay the night at his grandfather's house. The warrior didn't want to consider that option. He had a lot of other things to do, and he wasn't going to babysit this child. However, the boy was persistent. He ignored the man's answers and began to tell him that if they hurried, they would make it in time for dinner. In fact, Jinbeek saw meeting this man as an opportunity to learn a martial art. The stranger finally agreed to the offer and they headed towards the guy's house, not noticing that there was a man watching them from behind the trees. It was one of the mercenaries looking for the commander. The man in the hat was pleased with who he finally found. On the shore, Mrs. Shinny was reprimanding her subordinates who had spent all day searching but found nothing. The woman saw another mercenary rushing toward her, looking as if important information had come to light. She asked if the warrior had found the man they had come to this shore for, but the mercenary shook his head in the negative. He said he had found Kondun. This information stunned the lady. The woman smiled contentedly, realizing that this news was the best of the day. Without hiding the joyful note in her voice, Shinny said that they were looking for copper and found gold. By the time Jinbak got home, it was getting dark. His sister and grandfather were about to eat dinner sitting on the doorstep of the house. The boy asked his sister to prepare a portion of food for the guest who came with him, and a stranger appeared in the gate. Midden asked her brother who he had brought with him. The boy whispered to his sister that this warrior would teach him martial arts. The grandfather stared intently at the strange man. He wasn't happy to have a guest in his house. Something alarmed the old man. The stranger held himself confidently. His posture was military. Suddenly the old man saw something vaguely familiar in this young man, something he had not seen for a long time. He asked his guest a single question, whether he was related to Murim, and received an affirmative answer. The grandfather stood up abruptly and demanded that the boy leave immediately, causing everyone present to look puzzled. Jinbeak Lightning rushed to the warrior's defense, telling the grandfather that he was acting strangely towards their guest. The boy also hastened to clarify the situation, explaining that his coming had nothing to do with Murim. He had come because the boy had offered him a place to sleep. The old man sighed heavily and furrowed his brow. Despite the explanation, the situation remained unpleasant for him. He could sense trouble approaching. The man was not hard-hearted, so he allowed the warrior to spend the night in the house, but he had to leave in the morning. Hondun didn't understand the older man's reaction, but he was grateful for the temporary shelter. The old man moved closer to the warrior, and he noticed a scar on his chest. The scar resembled a mark left in battle, and the boy froze in surprise. He knew that such a mark indicated that the man was skilled in martial arts, which meant that the old man was also connected to Murim. The warrior's musings were interrupted by a boy who offered to escort him to a room for the night. Jinbeak decided not to miss the chance, introduced himself and asked the warrior's name, wanting to know the name of the man he had chosen as his mentor. The man had no plans to introduce himself, noting that they were casual acquaintances and would part ways soon. At the market, Jinbak had already realized that his new acquaintance had a challenging personality, so he wasn't upset by the answer. Jinbak decided to approach the question differently, apologizing for his grandfather's reaction of hating Murim, and added that he himself was very interested in martial arts. Wasting no time, he asked to be shown a few techniques because he dreamed of learning martial arts and becoming famous. The boy shared with the man his dream of traveling the world, saving people and leaving his name in history, but the stranger only frowned. The warrior was outraged. How could this boy consider Murim a game? He seemed too frivolous. Jinbak swallowed nervously as the warrior looked at him with a stern gaze. He felt uneasy. He hurriedly assured his new acquaintance that he was serious, emphasizing that this wasn't just a game. Suddenly there were unusual sounds outside the gate. Jinbak became alert, feeling the tension in the air. He heard his sister's desperate cry, calling for his and his grandfather's help. Together with the warrior, they rushed to the girl, not realizing what was happening. A small armed squad stood at the gate, and the unexpected sight made them freeze in place. Unlike the boy, Hondun knew who it was and quickly realized who these men had come for. Shinny said hello to the warrior, while behind her back, one of the mercenaries held Jinbak's sister tightly, covering her mouth with his hand. Tears froze in Midden's eyes, her gaze full of fear and despair. The hero became furious that strangers were treating his little sister so roughly. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave comments to help the new video come out as soon as possible. Have a great day.